Welcome, everybody. Blessed are those that visit this channel and enjoy the content here.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Counterpoints, a podcast sponsored by CS Money. Something, 3 years on the marketplace. Allegedly most trusted as support 24/7, all that. Right, that ends the part, right, of reading the copy, Moses. Now, everything I say from now on is authentic and just from me.
At one point in your career, your intros to these videos were like legend throughout the esports.
They were pretty good, weren't they? Yeah.
This was the bullshit that you bring up for episode 100 and X1122.
All right, here's what we'll do then. We'll do a better job of that, right? We'll reframe that, right? Take two. I've got my motivation now from the director. Right, so obviously, Moses, everyone out there in the scene at the moment is virtue signaling, I mean, across the board, almost every walk of life, but let's just keep that out of it. Mainly right now, the main area everyone's virtue signaling is they're all going, we need to have a really serious, mind you, a serious one about mental health and burnout and that. And then I just go, yeah, let's do it. And then they go, no, I meant all you guys. I've got to go to the pub now, actually. I'm clocking off. And so no one ever has the fucking discussion. So I thought, you know what? Like everything else in this world, I'll just have to fucking do it myself for that. So here we go. We're doing it. So I thought, right, who were the best people you could get for this episode? They weren't available. So then instead what I thought was, right, Alex here literally benched himself because he didn't want to travel and said it was too stressful. And then AZR he hasn't even been home, and he goes home like 2 times every fucking year or something. So he just lives on the road. These guys have got to be able to do this job. If they can't, who else can? That's what I say Moses.
Brought
and then
to you by
Moses,
CS Money.
Exactly. There you go. Here's the thing as well. Moses, by the way, and here's the secret reason why we could also do this episode is, I know people aren't going to give a fuck, Moses, but you actually travel more than some of the players. Like you have your own take on the burnout issue, I have no doubt. Yeah. So maybe we start with you on this, Moses. Where would you start on this topic? Like, obviously, I would just say this: if anyone's followed the history of Counter-Strike, it was actually, like, it's almost a good problem to have that we have so many events and in so many sick continents and countries and so much prize money. Like, one of the reasons I know a lot of those teams were attending events in China at the end of last year is every one of those motherfuckers was like $200,000 first place, like massive prize pools. They pay for everything, put you in a hotel. So the problem is, like, in a weird way, the fact that we're even in a position to discuss this being a problem for your job or for the players is almost like initially a good thing. It's that the scene's huge, right?
Yeah, and I think oddly enough, that is what makes this such a weird discussion to have, because I've seen it with, I've been the target of it. I'm sure plenty of the players have, and I know definitely some of the other commentators have, where, obviously we're working a dream job and we get to travel all over the world and see all these cool places and make money. So as soon as you start having the conversation about being burnt out or stressed or the travel being too much, there is like a certain section of the community and the fan base that just like responds with, shut the fuck up. You get to work in esports, you get to cast Counter-Strike for a living, or you get to play Counter-Strike for a living. But there is like a small section that immediately is just like, what a piece of shit. Like, what kind of a selfish or whatever, what kind of a person actually complains about having this as the job? So that subsection obviously misses the point. I guess my interest in this conversation has kind of gone on as I guess someone who has an older person's take on it, but I'm really curious to see, like, as I know for me, like, a lot of the burnout issue is more just the schedule that we have. Not only is it just exhausting, but what about the people who want to start a family? Or what about the players when they hit like 28, 29? What about the Pashas and the Neos that have kids and Taz that have kids? Like, at what point does the burnout issue also just say we need to be able to set up a future where the people working in this industry actually have time to be able to have a girlfriend, have a wife, have a husband, have a kid, have a dog, whatever it might be, like all these other things in life that we don't get to do at the moment. Like, don't we need to be building towards the possibility of players being able to have some kind of a settled down schedule and knowledgeable schedule so they can actually have a family 5 years down the road? And we're lucky that players, for the most part, are still very young and haven't gotten to that point. But that's a very real issue, I think. If you're going to be a player who dedicates, a decade of your life, and then all of a sudden you turn 27 and you realize you want to have a wife and kids and a house, and then there's just no time to do it in this career. And then it's like, oh, fuck, what do I do? I don't know, Aaron or Alex, if either of you guys had any of those thoughts at all. No, it doesn't have to be like the personal side of things, but,
Whatever you feel comfortable, yeah.
Definitely. I'm getting a little bit older now. Like, I'm definitely not in my younger days. So I'm like 27 now. So, at this point in my life, I'm already starting to think about the future, obviously, like family, kids and stuff like that. So, as you get older, priorities change and you're thinking about all these other things, and it definitely adds a lot more stress and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Can you see a world where you'd be able to do any of those things with the current schedule? Like, how much would your schedule have to be reduced to make you feel comfortable? Like, my big thing was I was never even able to like properly think about, I've wanted a dog for like 5 years. Not a whole lot of people know this. I actually, I paid to get a dog like in 2015, right before I started traveling, and immediately had to cancel it. And I've wanted a dog ever since I finally got one. But you don't even think about like trying to get a dog or trying to have a girlfriend or a wife, for like 3 years while you're under the crazy schedule, because you're just like, what's the point of even considering this as a possibility when I have this schedule?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, that's the same thing that I've done also in the last like couple months, is just like thinking of getting a dog, but there's just no chance because I can't stay here all the time, and like I'm able to look after it and stuff like that. So, the schedule definitely needs to change. I mean, disregarding like the whole coronavirus thing right now, like going back 6 months ago and going back to the schedule that we had for LANs was like, it was ridiculous. Like, I mean, in a month you could be in like 3 continents in like 3 weeks or whatever. So it's just too crazy. Yeah.
Right, Alex, obviously you literally benched yourself over some of these issues. So what are your thoughts?
I agree with Aaron. Like, we can't be having 3 different events that we have to go to, and like I think that's a very important thing, because you can have as many events as you want as long as teams can choose whether they want to go or not to them, and then that's their choice and that's up to them. But making teams go to them and not being able to skip events is where I drew the line, basically, because like we had planned to skip a few events and have time to rest and do the events that we wanted to, and yeah, it just turned out that we couldn't. So it was a tough decision to stop, but one that had to be made, I guess. And for Moses' question, I think it's even just to be performing on a top level, if you don't have a stable like life, but work, home life balance, you're not going to be performing to the top level anyway. So it makes it tough, yeah.
I guess that's the other side of the coin. Like, how much, like when you have this kind of a schedule, like, and you take some time off, I think everyone's kind of sort of realizing it to a certain degree, all the different areas of life that we've been ignoring for the past 5 years. Like, how much does having like, like a home to go home to, or like a girlfriend that you can meet up with, or a dog or whatever, like, are there things that you have realized that, have made you feel like you're in a better place mentally, like when that you've been able to actually pay attention to now, or been able to pay attention to over the past 6 months, that have improved your quality of life, that actually in turn make you a better player or professional?
Well, considering I haven't started playing again, I'm not sure if it's affecting like my individual level or anything, but I definitely feel much better being at home, seeing my girlfriend, talking to my family, because when you're on the road, and I guess maybe more true for in-game leaders, I like at events I'm working all the time, watching demos, watching the game we just played to see what we did wrong, and then watching the next team we're going to play, and it just never stops. So even at events, I spend 2 minutes talking to my family every other day, kind of thing. But yeah, just being able to talk to people, go out for a drink, like get a text from someone, like, can we go to the bar now? Like, yeah, it just makes a world of difference. And obviously we can't do it all year round, but having more time to do it is definitely better.
That's actually something I hadn't even thought of, actually, that we should probably reference, since you're both in-game leaders, is that there's the other thing people don't realise. At the moment, being as most teams don't have enormous support staffs, like even if they have a second coach, he's usually remote, or he's just an analyst who just looked up stuff, the person who's the in-game leader or the coach, they're getting even more wrecked by the schedule, because sometimes there's barely enough time between when you finish one game and you can play the next day just to get sleep and to practice. Never mind, go watch all the demos. And if it's a big playoff game, you might be taking years off your life by like 3 hours sleep, but you also want to win the game, right? What do you think, Azzy? You must have been in this position quite a few times with your team being in the top 5 most of last year, etc. Yeah,
I mean, just thinking now, like, for example, when we were in Katowice just the start of this year, like some of our games didn't start till like real late, 7 p.m. at night, and we wouldn't finish till about 11 p.m. And then after that, we'd find out we were the first game the next day, so we'd have to watch demos before I go to sleep with our coach. So yeah, it was just really packed, and obviously a lot of stuff going on with stress too.
Were you, because you were just a regular player, Aaron, for a long time, were you surprised at how much of a jump the workload is when you become like the in-game leader of the team?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I was just a player, like under Sponge, I mean, I had freedom to do whatever I wanted. I could just like listen to him, I'd accept it, and then I just play my own game. But now as an in-game leader, there's obviously, like Alex said, you got to watch demos, you got to watch your mistakes after a game, you got to prepare for your next matches coming the next day or whatever. And there's a lot of build-up compared to just being a standard player.
Now you know why he's such a grumpy bastard.
Yeah, that's true.
What about this then? Actually, something Moses said earlier, I thought it's an interesting angle as well, is there is this perception, right, that you will basically be shamed. Now, what's funny is now, because a whole bunch of players, and especially Astralis, who like were the best team in the world, have spoken out. Now all the reception to it's like really kind from fans, like, yeah, they should get time off. But like Moses said, if you spoke out on your own, say a year and a half ago, actually a lot of people would shame you for that and would be like, how dare you? Like, I wish I could do that job, you know, like you should be grateful for that. And, you know, you should need to, or they'd say something like, we get paid a lot of money. You know, there's like two angles they can go with on it. What do you think of that? Do you ever feel like an obligation, like you have to play all these tournaments, you have to do it because it's someone's dream job?
No, I never think of that, to be honest. I mean, obviously it's our dream job and we love it, but I'm not going to do it because someone else can do it or whatever. So, yeah, when I read that kind of shit, I'm just thinking to myself, like, shut the fuck up. You got no idea what it means. Like, they have no idea. They literally have no idea.
It's so weird, isn't it? Because it's like those are the fans that are supposed to be like helping us, like supporting us move the industry forward and in the right direction. And it's like almost as if we have like 10% of the fan base that actively wants to work against what's best for the people that are actually working here. And we know it's a dream job, but it's like, please, like we're just trying to bring up these issues so that the conversation can be had in public. It's just a very strange experience that I've always found. I know specifically, it's like Sadakist, and I know Henry got a bunch of flack for it for a while there. I know Anders has caught a bunch of stuff, and I've had a little bit here and there. But man, it is a weird experience to just be like, come on, like we're all trying to bring this in the right direction. Like stop being a dick. You're supposed to be on our side.
Yeah, exactly, man. I mean, there's just some people that are just
silly,
and that's as simple as it is, you know. Yeah.
Plus, if you do continue playing, then like sooner or later, Thorin's going to tweet that you're stealing paychecks. So you know you can't win either way.
Exactly. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, right? So no, but actually, another thing as well about that whole issue that I find really puzzling is like when people say that. So on the one hand, they say it's your dream job. So therefore, you should work yourself to death all day long and have no time off. It's like, that sounds like a fucking dream job, you idiot. That's no one's dream job. Like, no one's dream job is like just work in a business as the CEO 24 hours a day and then have no time to spend all the billions of dollars. Like, the dream part is you do the work part and then you get to enjoy the billions. Like, it's something I always say is the where we're so far from sports, unfortunately, is like, even those players you've heard of in the NBA who are doing all those extra hours in the gym, shooting the shots, they go home to a mansion every night. Half the games are road games, and even then it's usually within the same country. And in fact, that's why they made the whole conference thing in American sports. So you just travel your side of the country. It's not like you go to China and then come back and then go to Brazil the next week. And then on top of that, like I say, half the games are home games. Half the games you get to enjoy the fact you're a millionaire, you live in a mansion, you have a fucking Lamborghini, and you're seeing your kids every day. Then you go and do all the dream job part, which, yeah, it's really hard. But it's like they've got actually a very good balance of like, here's your life, here's what you enjoy, and then here's the part, where you've got to be the best and you've got to kill yourself. But there is a balance to it. It never overlaps. And one of the reasons we often give for that is they wouldn't even want you to practice and play more than that because that would just damage the product. Like the guy that they're giving $100 million to, some NFL quarterback, they don't want that guy like tearing his hamstring by over practicing. So unfortunately in sports, we know where the limit is. If you push people past this, it's like keying your own car. You're just going to fuck up your own thing. The problem is in esports, because it's all like a game of the mind, we still take for granted now that we're already not going too far. I think we are going too far. I think the times I've been at events, like half the times I've ever tweeted wild shit, I was just mad triggered at some event, like I had like 4 hours sleep and then I see something, it's like, right, these motherfuckers can learn today. And they just go off, don't you? No one knows that though. They all, you know.
It's at the end of those 15, 16-hour days where you're just like, fuck this shit, I'm done.
Like, what do you think about that angle though? Because like I said, like put it this way, when people say it's your dream job, one of the reasons they mean that is they know you guys get paid a lot of money. Like for your age, the salary you're on is amazing. But like I say, it actually doesn't become that great a salary if you can't spend it, if you can't do anything with it, if it's just in a bank somewhere and you're stuck at an event every day of your life.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, one of the biggest sacrifices obviously for me is that I obviously live in America now. And like Alex was saying before, that when we're overseas and like at events and stuff like that, you know, you can't see your mates. You can't just like have a beer with your friends and just relax and chill and reset. But yeah, obviously I don't have that luxury anymore, and obviously I'm in America and I only go back to Australia like once a year. So yeah.
Fuck's sake! Once a year you get to go home.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would
it's
you-
kind
would-
of ridiculous.
yeah. Go on, Alex.
Yeah, I was just like, even soccer, football, for us people from the UK, they play like maybe one Champions League game like every 2 or 3 weeks, and
Yeah.
that's just like they fly out, maybe stay one night, come home the next night, so you're away for 2 days, and that's if you're not playing at home. So it's just like when we go away for 10 days, and then like last year we were away for 3 weeks, we came home for like 2 weeks, and we were playing online matches, and then we went away for another 3 weeks, and going from Europe to America both times, or America to Europe, whatever. So it's just like it's not even, you can't even compare the two industries, like, and ours is too far the wrong way, basically.
But another factor as well, if the entire industry isn't changed, there's another problem that we have in every field, which is there's always someone else who'll do that job, at least initially. And so even if you guys were to say like, oh, I don't want to do as many events, or don't want to do it, there'll be some pro out there, like Alex was 2 years ago, who hasn't made it yet, who'd be like, well, give me that shot, like put me in the team, I'd go to the events. And so like there's also people get the feeling that like when you've been working that hard to get to tier 1 to get on top, you're going to want to take all those opportunities. You don't want to say no to a big event. You don't want to turn down, like you can't know if you're going to win the event next month. You have to say yes to the one in 2 months, right? Managing that calendar is way trickier than people understand.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're a team like ranked maybe like 9th to 15th in the world, and you don't have the luxury of always getting those invites, like you're saying, like you have to take them because you want to do well at these events and obviously get your rank higher. So yeah, it was just a lot of fucking games.
Well, you've experienced that. Like, what is it then like being a team that has to travel to like maybe say like 2 to 3 events across 2 months, but then even when you're back, you have to play in all the online qualifiers, and those are almost even more stressful because those are the ones where the schedule is like, oh,
You sometimes have to play all day for those, I notice.
you will be playing 6 best of ones today, and you won't actually know your schedule. It'll change every step of the bracket. Like, what is it even almost more difficult to have the grind to start to get noticed and picked up?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's definitely a barrier of getting to that point, and then once you reach that, then it just gets harder. Even so, like to qualify for the online qualifiers to get to like Cologne and stuff like that is definitely hard because everyone wants it. And then at the same time, when you're going to other events, and like for example, when we were at that not 10th to 15th or a little bit higher, like and going to the Asian minor and then going to America, and just like going through the whole jet lag situation, like just going from continent to continent, it's just rough as fuck, man.
Actually, on that topic, because it's always one that people have different answers to. Like, I want everyone in this call, including Moses, like, give me your thoughts. Like, how do you handle jet lag? Are you good at it? Do you think you can offset it? Because I'll tell you right now, I've always been terrible at that. Like, I just basically just deal with it and just get sleep where I can, and then I would say like don't complain, but I complain in different ways about other stuff. Like, I'll probably just complain about players, like you say, instead of just complaining about that. So I find it very hard personally. Like anyone who thinks if you just do it a long time, you just get used to it. I don't know if that's true. So what is it like for you guys? Like, have you got a system? Have you managed to sort of make it better? Do you just struggle like I do? How do you get down with it?
Definitely a struggle, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, before heading to a tournament, like if I'm going to China, I'll try to change my sleep schedule beforehand, like just sort of get closer. But I mean, jet lag for me personally is always rough as hell. Like I've always just been the worst with jet lag. So for me, it's just like making sure sleep schedule's on point beforehand, make sure I'm eating at the right times when I get to the place, and just pray.
Mate, you don't even have the luxury of changing your sleep schedule now because you're at an event the week before you go to an event in China. Like you're not even allowed to do it. You're playing in a grand final.
Yeah.
You know the sad thing, Moses, is when he said that, he goes, well, before the event, I'll start changing my sleep schedule. I'm just like, this motherfucker's a magician. What is he talking about? Like, I can't even do that at home, mate. Never mind, like, doing it on the event. What are you talking? He's saying it like it's so easy, Moses.
No, dude, it's definitely not easy. No way. Fucking hell, man.
What do you do, Moses?
Man, dude, I've usually very hit or miss with me. Like I've had some events where I do much better with jet lag than I than usual, and I've had some where it's been a disaster. I think it's gotten a lot easier since I've gotten into like a gym routine. Like I've actually found like if that first day you get there when you're just ass miserable and you wake up super early, like 3 or 4 in the morning,
Yes.
if you just force yourself to go to the gym, and even if you just work out for like 30 minutes, I found that to be like so helpful to just get the rhythm in. But I mean, mostly because for international flights, which is pretty much all my flights, man, the best thing I found, oddly enough, is fucking edibles.
Why did you say that?
I've tried. I don't even give a fuck. I've tried everything. I've tried melatonin. I've tried
Hey, fair enough.
I've tried binge drinking on the airplane just to pass out, but it's like the fucking just little bit of edible and I just pass out. I'm sleeping for like 9 hours and I wake up and
I gotta get on that too now, bro.
Dude, it's why you're in LA. It's great.
Yeah.
Like the first time I did it was actually going to an IEM Sydney. It was it was the best. I slept like all 13 hours of that LA to Sydney flight. And I woke up and I was ready to go for the whole day. It wasn't even an issue. But I mean, it literally is just like a toss up for me at times. And yeah, I don't know. I think the more interesting part about it is for me, this is the conversation that really hasn't been had is how does it affect you? Like all like the jet lag and the stress and the mental fatigue of being a competitor. Cause I know for me as a commentator, I find that like if I'm just like mentally exhausted from some kind of like the business side of esports or just from being on the road for like 4 or 5 weeks, the first thing that goes is my ability to like really feel motivated to sit down and like answer emails and make invoices. The next thing that goes is when we're casting, it's so hard for me to focus on the mini map to actually be able to like talk about like, the tactical in-depths. Like I just miss the details of what's happening on the map. Like what is it as a player, as an in-game leader that goes first when you're feeling really mentally fatigued and you're feeling whether it's jet lag, whether it's stress, whether you're angry, whatever it might be, like what is the first thing that goes?
For me it's my sleep. I just don't sleep anymore. Too stressed by everything.
Really?
Yeah, when we're in China, I think it was for Beijing or even Katowice, I was sleeping 3-4 hours every night at events for like the last 4 months I was playing. Like it was ridiculously bad. I just couldn't sleep anymore.
So for like an entire week of competing, you did an average of like 4 hours of sleep a night.
Yeah, like some nights 2 hours, some nights 4, and it was just And as soon as the competition's over, it's like, well, we're out, then I can sleep 8 hours. But as long as we're in the competition, I just can't sleep.
Do you even have an ability when you're getting that kind of sleep for a week straight and you go to like break down a match or research the next match? Do you even have the ability to like properly focus? Like say you're going into like a Friday game where you're in like the quarterfinals or the semifinals, whatever format. Like, do you even have the ability to properly look at the details of the team you're playing against?
Yeah. I mean, you can get used to everything, I guess. I just got used to being tired and doing it, and I had the coach and the assistant coach helping me out a lot. And like at Katowice, I stopped watching demos because it was just too much. They were doing all that for me, but yeah, you just get used to it, and when I go over things, maybe go over them like 2 or 3 times instead of just the once, just to make sure that I've got everything down and I know what I'm doing. But yeah.
When you were saying before, by the way, like when you're at events and you just wake up early, Moses, there's another thing that like people who've traveled to events will know that a fan won't understand. The worst feeling in the world is when you don't have a 9 a.m. game. You've got a game at like 12 or 2 p.m. call time, but you still wake up at 6 in the morning and you're looking at the clock like, why, God, why? Like, I actually could be asleep right now. What is this? You want to just punch your own head? Like, it's actually just annoying.
The best is because you always get woken up by like some shit detail going on at the hotel, like some
construction's my favorite.
Yeah, well, that one's rough, but like maybe you have like 2 of the housekeepers walk by in the hallway and they're having a conversation and they just say something outside your door, or maybe like 3 doors down, someone like the door just closes, or maybe you just hear one random ping from a WhatsApp message when you're in the group chat, and then you're just awake because of this dumbass fucking reason staring at the ceiling. Yeah. That is just torture.
This is why Zai was so good, though. The guy just sleeps wherever, whenever, whatever time zone. When we went to China, he slept like the 12 hours flight. We got there at like 10 at night, and he slept from 11 till 9. And then we won our game, and then against Big, I think it was 2-0 them at like 1 in the morning, and then went to sleep from 1 till 10 the next morning. And the guy just the jet lag doesn't exist for him.
Sounds like a fucking Pokemon or something. What the fuck?
Rolex, bro. What the fuck?
It makes him sound more lovable though. So fair enough. You know, you're doing a good job for his rep there.
It's like it was like what Aaron was saying earlier. He doesn't have to do anything with tactics. He's IWU. He just has to sleep and wake up.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't actually have to pay attention to any of the details. It's just like, here's one, bro. Go kill everything.
Actually, that's another thing as well, is when people say like the stress of it all, right, they're obviously meaning stuff like this, like tangible stuff. You have to jet lag from the flight, you're eating a different diet because you're going to a different country, you're awake different times, you're working at an event, right? But what about like the stuff that overlaps into mental health areas? Like, for example, does all of this stuff, would you already, like, are you people who get stressed by, for example, all the scrutiny online, like fans saying stuff, community people saying stuff, people criticizing your score? Does that affect you anyway? Does it affect you more if you have all these factors in play? What's it like?
Honestly, it just depends how stressed I actually am. It depends on the day. Like, if I come on and after a game, if I have a shit day, I've just read something on Twitter or something, and I read like someone's coming at me. I'm just like, "Fuck this guy, dude!" Like, sitting there just raging even more, like, and just fucking getting baited into it. But,
And then find out I was Duncan.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's just frustrating. I guess that just builds over time, especially when it's getting towards the end of the season, and that's where you're like peak burnout mode, and you're like Alex was saying, sleep for him. I've also had the same thing with me, and when I get lack of sleep, I just get really frustrated and get more angry in games. So, yeah, at the end of the season, it's just pretty rough. And on top of that, with the community like coming at you sometimes, it just makes it a bit worse. But you know, it is what it is. You just got to handle it.
What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I think the big one for me is because I have like certain health issues that I went into, and like that makes travel for me very stressful. And when you're traveling as much as we are, like the stress from traveling, and then I have to watch what I eat, and some places you can't like choose what you're eating, so you have to just eat what there is, and so that's also stressful. And then like stomach issues start kicking in, and you're thinking, oh fuck, now I'm done for the event, and that's also stressful, and everything just adds up, and then you don't sleep, and then when you're not sleeping, then you're not recovering, and I don't know, never ends.
Since becoming in-game leader, I've actually had more stomach issues because of stress.
There seems to be a real like pandemic. I mean, pardon the phrase at this time, but there seems to be there seems to be a real pandemic in Counter-Strike where there are like a lot of players that have massive health stomach related issues. Like what Device has had it. Get Right is obviously the big name that's going on. You guys talking about it now. I'm sure there's other players that we don't know about it, but maybe you guys have talked to them. What is like? Is it just literally stress that triggers this? Is it just like the high intensity moments?
Yeah, for me personally, I think so.
Is it while you're playing, or is it like, you know, when everything's calmed down, like after a stage match or something?
I guess it just depends. Like, how stressed I am. It could just be any time of the day, or that's pretty much it. It just depends how stressed. Like, fuck, I don't even know how to explain it, what I have, but I work a lot with obviously our mental coach and in trying to fix that. He's also a nutritionist, so I'm obviously trying to eat a lot better and trying to exercise a little bit too to help that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, mine's a daily thing. Like, it doesn't matter if we're at events or not. So it just gets triggered like 10-15 minutes before we actually have to play, by the fact that like when you go on stage, you're not allowed back off stage. So if you need to go to the toilet, you can't. Like, there's loads of.
So that's as an anxiety itself.
Yeah. So it just like all kicks in. But when I start playing, it's fine. But like I've had it for 2 years now, so kind of built a routine up, and I'm dealing with it that way. So it's not an issue as such.
Is that what you guys have found that has helped most? Is like diet and exercise, and I don't know, some like these things aren't always like available to you at certain events. Like certain hotels have a shitty gym, certain events don't have good food, and those are the two big things for you guys.
Yeah, diet for me is definitely the main thing. If I'm eating a lot of fatty things, it obviously upsets it a lot more. So I definitely try to stay away from that stuff. But like you said, when you go to somewhere like China, and sometimes you don't know what you're eating and stuff. So it's hard to maintain it all.
I lived on rice for like 2 weeks in China. I didn't.
Oh man, I've been living on rice since the day I was born, dude. So I'm good.
Listen, I can relate to a lot of the problems you guys are having with food, because sometimes at events I'll order some fries and then they'll arrive just before I have to go on for a segment. And when I come back off, you won't believe this, but they're cold. And actually that makes them significantly not as enjoyable. And I just think, wow, I've got to change my life. I can't keep doing this to myself. So listen, I'm right there with you. We're all in the trenches struggling to get... No, but jokes aside, obviously. What about actually, since you referenced there, Azza, like obviously a big org like 100 Thieves has all the sports psychology trainer type people and the mental coaches and all that stuff, which has become a bigger thing over the years, especially because when Astralis won their first major, people remember the story of that Finnish woman they had who now works with Ents or whatever, right? Does that angle actually help with some of the stress of the job, having someone you can talk to before a big game or who helps? Because as far as I know, a lot of what they're doing, like I know fans think they're doing some magic bullet and they're sitting you down like fucking Freud, like, so tell me about your childhood, and they're fixing you as a person. But as far as I know, all they really do is they sort of help you frame what's going on, right? And kind of think, like, get your head into a space where when you compete, you're not like anxious or whatever, something along those lines, right? So what's it like working with those people, Azza?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of my guy that I work with, Edward, so he's a nutritionist and it's he helps with mental also. So working with him, definitely, like when I'm just talking to him about stuff, he definitely gives me a clearer vision of stuff. He obviously has a better idea with all the understandings of all the psychology and stuff behind stuff. So, I mean, he helps a lot, and he's someone also that I can talk about these things and he can really understand it. And, just make sure that I'm trying to fix the stuff that errors in my game also in terms of mentality. So, yeah.
Did you actually have that in Vitality? I've never actually seen if they have someone like that or not, Alex.
Yeah, we have a sports psychologist. So they're a group of people that work with tennis players primarily, but they also do lots of different sports people. So most famously, Joe Wilfried Songa, the tennis player, I think.
Yeah.
So one of the guys is his coach, and the rest kind of all work in that area. But I never used them because I didn't really get around to it and didn't have time like within my day to kind of do that. But what I found helped the most was just being like when we got to big events like Cologne, Malmo, we actually had people come out, like our families come out, and just having more people to talk to and just having time to talk to your family and actually see them made like a massive difference before going on stage. That was like Cologne, Berlin, I think, like other events where we had fans come out as well. It made a huge difference. It doesn't really matter who it is, but just having more people, because when you're just like 7, 6, 8 guys all the time, all year round traveling together, I mean, you love your teammates, but not that much. So you need to see other people and because you're working, living, I don't know about you guys, but some teams are like working, living together. It's just like, it's hard to differentiate between what is work, what is time off, what is everything else. So yeah, it makes a massive difference to me anyway.
How important is it, do you guys think, from your experience, to be able to just like disconnect from Counter-Strike entirely for like, 3 days a week, whatever, maybe even if it's just like maybe one day? Like, do you feel like super refreshed after that? Like just stepping away from Twitter, stepping away from watching, games on a different event, stepping away from researching demos, steps away from scrimming. Like, do you guys find that disconnect to be like really, really helpful? And is it hard to get that disconnect in your current situations?
So for me personally, just like you said, 3 days off or something like that, it definitely helps. So I just don't think about CS for 3 days. And obviously the other 4 days of the week, it's on my mind constantly, so I don't want to think about it. But after those 3 days, I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go and scrim again with the boys and, have some fun playing CS again. So, but I think it is hard to disconnect, like you're saying, because there's just, with the pack schedule that we have, you're always thinking about Counter-Strike. You're always thinking about your next opponent. You're always thinking about strats or what to do next. And in the level of CS today, you're always thinking about stuff like that. Like, for example, in CS now, there's just like, you need to have so many strats compared to what it was like 5 years ago when you could run, like Fnatic could just run a default and just run over everyone. But now you have to have like fakes of every strat that you have, like 3 fakes or something, or the other team knows. So you're constantly thinking about this stuff, especially as an in-game leader. So yeah, I think it is definitely hard to disconnect.
I spoke to an in-game leader recently who said probably the biggest stress that he currently has in his role as like the tactician is the fact that teams at the moment, and I mean maybe I guess probably for the past 2 years, have been playing the same team so many times, like over the course of like 2 months. Like I think his example was there's a specific team that they played like 7 times in the past like 6 weeks or something like that across different events and different qualifiers. And he said the biggest stress is having to come up with new tactics against a team that you're playing this frequently in best of 3 series. There's no way to reinvent the wheel, or there's no way to change things with the kind of schedule that we have, especially against a team that you just that you play so frequently. Is that, not accurate for you guys?
That sounds definitely very accurate, especially like in NA right now, there isn't like the biggest tier 1 scrim pool, I guess you could say. So you're obviously versing the same teams constantly, or you're trying to verse the other teams in the other group, and then you're playing them again when you get out of the groups. Like you're constantly versing the same team. It's definitely very tiring, and like you said, you have to keep having bringing up new strats because obviously they know. So yeah, it's a lot going on.
Did you experience any of that, Alex, when you were playing?
Yeah, that was a huge problem for us actually when we got shocks in, because we didn't have any time to prepare, and like the stress of trying to fix things that we may not even be using, because like when we have time to prepare, we may not even like have shocks in that role, and thinking about, okay, what have we done the last 2 events? So you like our analyst was going through our old demos to see what strats we were running to like move us away from that, or use to create new fakes for that, and it was just like it's a never-ending cycle. And as I mentioned before, when we're on our like 2-3 week runs, like you're thinking about that in the plane going from Dallas to LA, and then from LA to Cologne or whatever it was. It's just like even when you're not playing CS in that kind of environment, you're still thinking about CS all the time, and it's stressful. I don't think I'm going to die as old as I was going to anyway.
It's not funny, but it's funny.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I don't know if you guys have this sensation. This was probably like maybe the one of the weird things that I still have to like work on getting over. Obviously when CSGO was like kicking off in like 2015, like those first like year, like 2015, 2016 was great. It was a party on the rise. And then I hit this wall where with the amount of travel that we're doing, and I guess it might have just been like the buildup of all these things you have to do. Like when you're gone for like 7 weeks at a time, or if you're gone for 10 weeks away from home, and then you get home and you realize you have like this laundry list of chores, calling the bank, calling all this different bullshit that you've had to put off because, you were in Europe for 6 weeks or something like that. For me, I have this weird sensation when I do like multiple events in a row where I just think, man, it's like something's going to come crashing down. Like there's something that's going to go wrong soon. Like this, it's all too good that I get to travel around the world and then cast video games for a living. Like, when's the other shoe going to fall? Do you guys ever experienced that with all the traveling we do, that you're just like something bad?
I mean, you can add into it, Moses, that like there also is the real possibility in both of our jobs. Like for an hour work, maybe someone else gets hired for the next events. Maybe they don't like what we do. Maybe we're burned out for a week and we don't do as great a job, and that someone sees that and they don't like it. If you're a pro player, you might get cut from the team if you lose 2 more tournaments. If you have a really bad major, they might go a different direction like that. There's a real and the mental one that kind of blurred together, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially that's a very like unique, I guess, caster-oriented stress. I know people always, whenever we've spoken out about like the crazy schedule of a caster, because as you mentioned at the start, a lot of the times we're actually on the road more than a lot of pro players, just because we have to go to do studio shows for so long. And people just say, oh, why don't you just like take an event off? And there is like a very real, I guess fear, because when you negotiate with companies, you do feel like even if you have a decent relationship, but there is a little bit of a game being played, and that's going to be used against, that can be used against you in the future.
Yes.
And I guess that's always the biggest worry, is like, if I skip this organizer's event and then they think that I'm not prioritizing them, or they think I don't want to work with them, and they hire someone else who's, also cheaper, most likely. then what are the odds that they actually just stick with that guy moving forward? They say, screw him. He just wanted to go home. He didn't want to come do the work. He's not dedicated. And I guess that's a very caster and talent unique. I'm sure there's a lot of people who go through that, but it's always been like this weird where you just feel like there is like a chess game being played through negotiations.
What do you guys think in terms of as players, though? Because like I said, obviously as players, you also have the stress that you might get cut from the team or that the team might make changes, even if it's not you. That might be a stress, right? A friend of yours might get kicked from the team, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's something in the past that I had in my mind, especially when I first became an in-game leader. I didn't have so much faith in myself to like do it. I was always like, I think when I became an in-game leader, I was pretty happy to do it because in the past I didn't agree with some of my in-game leaders and the stuff that they did. So
name names.
I won't say anything. But, yeah, as time went on, it was just like, obviously I had a little bit of self-doubt, but over time it obviously got better with me working with my mental coach. So he obviously helped a lot, but that's definitely something that I've had in my mind in the past for sure.
Yeah, for me personally, I kind of gambled my career on that idea because obviously, back in the day, they preferred to bring Existence and Smiths back to G2 instead of bring younger players up to the team. So at some point, I was just like, okay, I have to become an in-game leader and take a team higher than the current French teams. If not, we're never going to make it into the top tier of French Counter-Strike. So kind of gambled like if I become an in-game leader and it doesn't work out, then that's kind of my career over, because once you become an in-game leader, teams have a very tough time not seeing you as an in-game leader anymore.
Yes,
and
you get pigeonholed. Yeah.
And other in-game leaders won't want you as a player because they may feel threatened by you since you were an in-game leader. So yeah, I kind of gambled my career on that, and I was thinking like, okay, if this doesn't work out, that's it. But yeah, I kind of made peace with that idea, and it worked out. So I'm happy now. But yeah, it was definitely a gamble.
That's actually a pretty baller move, though, to be like, okay, fuck these guys, let's go get a lower team and carry them all the way to be better. Well,
reverse Kevin Durant syndrome.
Both of you guys have, spent that time in like the lower divisions. Aaron, your teams have been trapped in that hell for like the first 3 years of CS:GO. Alex, obviously, you just described that story. Is it more difficult is it more stressful in the rise as one of those teams to get into the top 10, or is it more stressful being in the top 10?
For me, I think it's definitely more stressful in the top 10. I mean, when you're out of the top 10 and you're seen as the underdog, I think there's a lot less pressure. So when you get to the top 10 and you want to stay there and you want to keep like rising through the ranks, it's definitely a lot harder, especially when the level of play is a lot higher also. So yeah, definitely.
I agree with Aaron. I think it's two different worlds. Like when you're not in a top team, the grind is insane. Like you're playing. I used to play 14-hour days, like just to try and make it at some point. And once you've made it, then that's over. But you're now traveling to events like for 36 weeks for a year, and you have to perform on the big stage, and everyone's watching you, and you go from playing like a competition with 2,000 viewers to the major with like over 1 million. It's just everything becomes more stressful, and I feel like because you're grinding for so long, that's kind of your comfort zone, and you're fine with it because that's what you're used to. And then once you move out of that, then it becomes stressful.
Well, I remember my first major back in like 2014, and before that we were just playing a lot of online tournaments in Australia, and you get like 1K viewers. And I've gone into the first major match, I just pressed tab and I've seen 200K viewers. I'm like, what the fuck, dude?
That's awesome.
Right, let's do the little CS money giveaway now. Get it out the way. So, okay, AZR's going to step up to the plate here, or AZR, as they called him in the NA scene for the first 2 years. So the skin in question that you can win, obviously this isn't going to be the answer to the question. It's a different skin that you win if you win it, is a P90 Asimov factory new, which I'm informed is apparently a classic skin for the P90. Although why the P90 gets to have any classic skins, I don't know. It's obviously an abomination of a weapon. So, right, what we do is I'm going to ask AZR the question about a different skin. It's actually going to be a multiple choice one for the answer, so he's got a chance to just get it anyway. If he gets it right, nobody Google any of this shit, then he wins the skin that I just talked about, the P90 Asimov. And if he gets it wrong, then all you plebeians can potentially enter it by putting the right answer in the chat and not in the chat, in the fucking YouTube comments, and put your Steam link or whatever, or the Steam ID, and they'll send one person it. So the question is this, AZR. It says, what mythology does the Orp Gungnir refer to? And you've got 4 choices. Is it A, Celtic? Is it B, Greek? Is it C, Inca? Or is it D, Scandinavian? Which of those 4 would you pick? The Orp Gungnir.
Fuck. I got no idea, so I'm just going to gamble and just say, I'll say C, Inca.
That was not the correct answer. So any fan out there who knows the answer, is it A, B,
Fucking
C, or D? You can listen back to it and then put the answer in the YouTube comments with the Steam ID or whatever, and one of you will win the Peanut Yopski. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. So here's what I want to talk about now, which is, how does any of this actually change? Like, have you actually had these discussions with you're obviously both in huge organizations. Have you had these discussions with your organization? Like, Alex, in your case, obviously you did in as much as you bench yourself, but like, is there a way forwards from the organizational perspective, from the player perspective, where we can start to change the circuit so that it becomes more amenable to the kind of lifestyle you'd like to have?
I think what went wrong was when the tournament organizers required teams to sign up and like agree to contracts, and that's what changed from 2019 to this year. For example, was it last year? If we didn't want to do events, then we could have. Whereas this year you have to. So I mean, like, the only thing I could say from an organization point of view was just be like, don't sign up to too many leagues. And I don't know. There's not much that they can. I don't think the power's in their hands to change it, put it that way.
Yeah, just for anyone who's a casual fan and doesn't know what Alex is referring to, in the past, to some degree, you had more say over which events you attend. But for example, if you sign up as a Blast Partner team, you're going to do all of the big Blast events. If you're in ESL Pro Tour, they have that system where the teams that signed up, I think as part of ESL Pro League, can only skip, I think it's 2 events a year. Admittedly, this is before all the lockdown stuff, so it's never actually been applied because we didn't have the lands, but it was going to be something like that. So there was basically a lot less mobility in this year than in the past for teams to say no. What about on your side, AZR? Is it something 100 Thieves discuss?
I mean, us talking with our VP Jacob, I mean, they're always comfortable with whatever we want to do. If we don't want to go to an event, obviously, they'll completely agree with it. So I don't think it's really, like Alex said, I don't think it's really on our organizations, more so on the tournament organizers and their schedules, especially when there's like 4 schedules going at the same time. You got ESL, DreamHack, Blast, whatever else there is. It just gets a bit too crazy. So, I mean, when they get their shit together, then it'll definitely be a lot better. But it's crazy right now.
How much does that kind of side of the industry affect you guys, you're like as players? Like, I know for us as casters, and we're a little bit more involved, I guess, in like the political and business side between all these different TOs since they hire us. But like when we had like the situation at the end of last year where like some of these leagues hadn't been announced, you knew they were coming, but didn't really know the schedules of where they were going to be held and when they would be held and what location and who would be part of it. Does that affect you guys and mentality as players when you're just like, don't even really know like what we're practicing for, don't even know where we're going to be, come February, don't know where we have to travel to or how long we're going to have to be there or who's going to be there at this league? Does that mess with you guys at all?
I mean, yeah, for me personally, like the start of this year, I remember we were talking about all these these ESL leagues, Flashpoint leagues or whatever, and we couldn't get given a schedule or anything like that. So I couldn't plan what I was going to do for what time we'd be in America when I could spend time with my family or my girlfriend or whatever. And it's just a clusterfuck, dude. Yeah. You just couldn't, you just don't know what's going to happen in the next month. So it's just hard to plan shit.
I think we did actually very well planning. So we're not involved at all. Our coach doesn't, unless we have to have a discussion about maybe skipping an event. We're not involved. We're just told you're going to this event, and that's what the coach has decided, and we trust him fully to, have our corner if we need time off, and it worked like that. So yeah, that's about it for me.
Right. As far as I know, there was some discussion, right? It hasn't been decided on, I think, yet, about increasing the player break. Was that for this year? Wasn't there some big discussion going on with CSPPA or something?
I think it was
Well,
to change the player break.
I
The
think it
timing.
Oh,
was-
change when it was,
I
right?
don't
Okay.
think it was-
Yeah.
I think it's longer as well. I think last year it was 3 weeks, and this year it's a month, I think.
What do you guys think about that as a general topic then? Because for me, like, there's two ways we could do this. We either just give you a bigger player break, so let's stop even calling it a break. Let's just call it off season at that point in time and make it like 2 months long or something. Like traditional sports have. They have a time where you don't have to play or practice. You can just give you a live. Or you go the other way and you keep like the current player break, like 3 weeks, and you add another one and you just make it like they space out the year. Like maybe they're each one's 6 months
summer
apart.
break and a winter break.
Something like that. Like, so you're either having a big break to really decompress, or like a couple of little ones that keep you going. Which side would you come down on? Which do you think's more likely? What do you guys think?
Yeah, go on.
this one.
Okay. I don't think that it solves all the problems, whatever you go for. Obviously, having breaks is great, but it doesn't change the fact that you're not going to have that like work-life balance most of the time. And I think that's what really needs to be, from my point of view anyway, that needs to be sorted. Like maybe having more time between events instead of having like longer breaks, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so instead of having like 3 events in a row, back-to-back weeks, you at least get like 4 days at home between them, or a week at home between them, or space them out better.
Yeah, but that's what we had planned with Vitality going into this year. We had planned to do like one event and have at least a week home between events, and that sounded fine to me. Like you're away a week, you're home another week, but yeah, it didn't turn out that way.
No, that's actually, when you point it out, that sounds so simple, but I think that actually would be a big game changer. Like, here's the thing. In theory, you could have all the same events in the year. You just have to schedule which events which after the other ones more reasonably. So, for example, if someone wants to do like a small 3-day dream hack, cool, let's have that be the week after one of these big full week-long tournaments. Let's not have like the 3 big massive tournaments back to back to back. So I can tell you in my own job, some of those times when I'm being really creative, putting out loads of interviews and talk shows, I used to wreck myself back in the day by just scheduling poorly. As in, when it said it ended at 9 o'clock for one show, I would just schedule the next show for 9 o'clock. And so once one finished, I would jump off, I'd go to the next one. Now, all I changed was just put half an hour buffer between it. And that alone just makes it like 10 times easier to deal with mentally. You have like a moment to relax, you wait, then you jump in the next thing. Like it sounds small, but it's like a massive game changer. So I feel like if you knew guaranteed you always had like 3-4 days at home between every event, that would help you decompress a bit, right, AZR?
I think for me it's a little bit different just because I'm not actually in Australia.
Do you never get the feeling that after living in America for long enough that it's home? Does it never kick in that sense?
I mean, it definitely, I guess it is home, but in the sense that I can't just like, this goes to the point earlier that Alex made, was I just can't go chill with mates that just like
Fair
in
enough,
Australia.
yeah.
I don't have that luxury of doing it. So for me, I would look forward more to like a longer break because then I can actually go home and
Right.
chill with mates. So, but I definitely see where Alex is coming from for sure.
Because another problem as well I find in the scene, and this is actually the biggest issue I had with the whole Blastralis thing last year when Astralis was skipping all those events, is it's one thing if you skip an event, that's fine. You can even skip one every month if you want. But part of the issue with me is it's every event isn't equal. Like an event that if you live in France and the next event's in fucking Germany, that's not that big a travel schedule. If it's in China, that's a big deal. So like one of my issues as well is we have got such an exotic calendar and circuit right now that I don't think people, like no one ever factors that in when they're thinking about some of these events. Like you really can do events where you go from fucking Sydney to Brazil to China back to Europe to like that's ridiculous. At that point in time, like if you just counted the hours, it's like you're circumnavigating the globe 2 or 3 times if you put in the total amount. Like it's different if you did 3 events in America in the next 2 months and you could kind of like space it out a bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of last year, I think we went from America to Europe, like Turkey, somewhere in Europe, and then to China, back to Europe, back to America. So we were just constantly changing time zones, and it was it's just draining, bro. That's pretty much it. It's just really draining.
Oh, those are the worst trips. I've done those. I've done what? I think we did 1 year for us as talent. We did Germany for like Pro League. We went to Sydney for IEM, and then we went to Dallas for Pro League finals. And then I think I was home for like 2 days, and then I was like back to Europe for another event right after that. And it was just like, holy shit, I just circled the fucking world in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, and as soon as you finish the event, that's usually when you get adjusted to the time zone there, and then you just changing instantly.
Especially in Asia or Australia, where it's like literally a 13-hour mind fuck. It's like this sucks.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I think it's
like no joke. I actually even think there's another area that like the TOs, because the problem is this, right? It's all well and good us just saying who don't own massive tournament organizing companies just agree with each other when to do the events. Like they're not going to do that on some level because they're battling each other. But one area that they could all run the same events but just give us a break is schedule it like I was alluding to there. Like if you're going to do an event in New York and he's going to do an event in Dallas, can we have them one after another so you can just fucking travel from one to the other like that? That doesn't seem like that's like a huge thing that would wreck your business, but it would. Even that small change between two different TOs could have a huge effect. That would really. I think everyone who worked the event would appreciate it in that regard.
Yeah, definitely, completely agree.
I think that the hard part, and I think the most stressful part about like those back-to-back events, like, I mean, yeah, the work and obviously the games for players is very difficult, but I know one of the most stressful parts about it was always, if you're a player or talent, when there's like two back-to-back events, your only days off, since every event is 6 days now, your only day off is the travel day. Like that's the only day you have completely off to just like not have to be on camera or not have to be, setting up to play a game. And, you start getting into a world where you just work 6 days. And sometimes, especially early on, the broadcast days were 12 hours long. And then you get on a plane and you have to do emails and type up notes and type up whatever it is on the airplane just so you have time to go to fucking sleep or take a nap or go to the gym or have a drink or whatever it might be. That's where things get really, really wild.
Well, there's one thing actually we could ask these guys about, because listen, another very contentious topic that gets fans really mad is any team that says no to or skips a media day. Like famously, obviously FaZe Clan, because they're the ones with the fuck off money, have done it like a million times. And you can just imagine some of the people in that team might not give a fuck and might be in the club at 2 a.m. that day instead. So the problem with that scenario is I can see both sides of it, because on the one hand, like, listen, everyone knows with the way that investment has inflated the industry of esports, like, just playing the game, it doesn't matter if you're Astralis, that doesn't actually make back the money that they pay you for your salary. So on one level, media has to be important. That's a big part of how these companies are trying to get the sponsorships and the things that feed the industry, that lifeblood of the industry. But on the other end, like Moses is saying here, if my only days off are going to be the days I'm flying, and then I see a media day scheduled into that calendar for one day, I'd be fucking tempted if I was a pro to think, there's no way I can skip this, or can we send one of them along and I can stay back, or you know what, we went out of the tournament early, come on boss, can we just like skip this entirely? It's got to be tough, right? Those are extra obligations just outside of being a pro.
Yeah, I think the worst one was actually the Berlin Major, where we made it to the playoffs and we had like 3 days off, and they scheduled 4 hours of media day for every single one of those days. And like, that's after 2 weeks of playing already, and what's the point? And going to like an ESL event and then going to another one 2 or 3 weeks later, why do you need to redo photos? There's like nothing's changed. We look the same. I can understand like some video stuff, but come on, like photos.
That's a good argument. I can't lie.
I mean, I wouldn't mind it if something had changed, if we had a new shirt, if we had a new player. But doing photos when it's not the thing that takes the longest, but it's just like, come on, nothing's changed.
No, but even when you say that, it doesn't take long. So listen, take the photo doesn't, but they have to take you there in a shuttle. You have to wait for an hour before. You have to wait for everyone else to get done. Like there are reasons why, because if a fan hears this and thinks it's going to be a 5-minute job, that in itself is a couple of hours just to get the photos taken.
Yeah, media days usually last like an hour and a half.
That's if they're on time. That's if they're on time. They never are.
Yeah, that's true.
Because that's also, to be fair, one of the things I think which is part of the problem we have in esports is if you actually know where esports came from, no one designed all this stuff to be evil. It's like I said at the beginning of the conversation, we didn't used to have enough tournaments. Like when Moses was a pro, he didn't even get to go to any tournaments in Europe. Like he would have loved to have gone to like fucking 8 events in a year. So the problem is, on the way up, everyone wishes we had all these events. Then you've got the whole angle on the other side that like events didn't used to last as long. Like events used to just be like that tournament organizer, he only runs 4 tournaments a year, so he's not thinking about what his rivals do, and he's just trying to make his 4 tournaments the best. And so I feel like one of the problems with a lot of this stuff is everyone's just stretched too thin, because all these parts are independent. No one's thinking about the bigger picture, unfortunately. Like, ESL's trying to make their tournament the best tournament. And unfortunately, they have to sort of be like, if you don't like the other tournaments, then quit them. Just do my tournament. Like, but that doesn't help the whole scene. Like, no one's going to do that. So at the moment, it's hard to see how anything moves on from where it is at the moment. Like, a lot of the money concerns mean people have to kill themselves almost doing how much work they do. There's not really much you can do about it. You just have to work yourself to death. You have to go, if you want to be the best, you have to go to every tournament, get all the ranking points. If you want to be the best TO, you have to put on every event like it was a world championship. It's hard to get out of the cycle, I feel like.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question, Alex. You kind of already answered this with your spacing out events, Aaron. If there's like one thing, I know there's like multiple things that need to be fixed to kind of alleviate some of these mental health and just stress issues. But if there was like the one biggest thing, or like the primary thing that you think could make the biggest difference as a player, what in the scene would be changed?
I mean, I think I just completely agree with Alex. It's just the spacing of events. So you just get back and you're able to relax and able to just actually fix stuff when you actually get back to, compared to when you're on the event. Like Alex was saying before, it's so hard to fix stuff and change stuff when you're going from event to event. So, I mean, yeah, just the spacing of events just needs to change for sure.
Okay, that's pretty legit.
Yeah.
I guess my biggest question, because I think this kind of touches on some other things. I guess the only thing that I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this, well, because I know as like talent, like, you know, we have that like same, you know, a lot of us, you know, I this COVID has been like the longest I haven't seen some of those guys since like 2015. I mean, we were kind of basically just like a Counter-Strike team, like me, Henry, Alex, Anders, Chad, you know, etc. Matt when he was around. You know, it'd be like going from country to country, hotel to hotel for, you know, basically 11 months out of the year. And you guys have the same situation with players, but, you know, you don't always have the greatest relationship with, you know, whether it's a player, whether it's a colleague, whether it's someone you're spending all this time with. And on top of that, when you spend 11 months or 10 months or whatever it is out of the year, you're obviously going to have, you know, a week where some guy just pisses you off or he just really gets on your nerves and like you just fucking hate one of your teammates for just like 3 days. How much does that cause issues that just shouldn't be there just because you're simply spending so much time with the same amount of people over and over again?
I mean,
like, is that like a different level of stress, especially when you're trying to fix something and like you fucking hate this guy because he made some shit comment while you're having a dinner or something?
It just adds on top of things, right? Definitely in the past where you just like you're playing and you just don't want to listen to this motherfucker speak to you or something like that, you know, like it definitely over time it definitely can, you know, add up. So I mean, I think that's a thing that Edward helps a lot with our team, is like making sure that if there's shit that needs to be aired out, you air it out and you don't keep it in, because eventually it's just going to explode. So it's got to be open and communicate.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also with all the fatigue and stress, like a small problem can become a very big problem in your head, and just like almost just think about that one problem and not think about everything that's good, and just makes problems worse. And yeah, as Aaron said, the most important thing is just to have like a very open relationship, because if you don't, the team is going to explode. Like there's no way around it.
Yeah. Right, even though this is a really abstract way to phrase it, I thought it would just be good to get a sense of where people are at after this conversation, right? If you were to rank like how acceptable the current life of a pro gamer is, like 10 is going to be like the most acceptable, like everything's perfect basically, and we'll make 1 like it's the worst possible, can't be that good. Like where are we at the moment? Like how bad a problem is all the travel and the stress and the extra stuff? Like where would you be at as a 10's the best, remember 1's the worst? Where would you at 1 to 10?
Probably be like a 5. Maybe even a 4. I think it's just pretty bad the way it is. I mean, there's a lot of things that we want to see change. Like we just said before, obviously we want to see spacing, but the thing that you brought up earlier too, where if events could be like, if they're in America and going from like New York to Dallas and not going from continent to continent, that would definitely be a huge change also that I would definitely look forward to. But yeah, definitely not happy with how the scheduling is right now.
Yeah, I was going to go for a 4. I just think that there are so many, like there are pros to being a pro, but there are so many things that a lot of the community don't know about and don't see it, and quite frankly haven't and probably won't ever experience, like traveling as much and stuff, going from hotel to hotel. That yeah, it is very, very tough, and things do need to change in my mind.
What would you say, Moses? What would your ranking be?
Man, you guys fucking stole my thunder. I was gonna say 4-2, and that's off the back of I've been chilling for like the past month. I've been in a great mood with this. Been after Flashpoint, I had like literally 4 weeks off of like nothing to do, and I've been great. So I'm still gonna, I guess, go for like a 4-ish, give or take 1. I think especially talent is like in a really weird position. One thing that I think has been like the biggest point of stress for most of us, and I haven't necessarily had this convo with some of the other guys, but we're in like this really weird, like rock and a hard place situation where our biggest value is like the content that we do, but we don't control the content that we create. We create the content for ESL or with ESL, and we create it with Blast, we create it with DreamHack. Duncan's really the only one with like an active YouTube channel. And the problem is that YouTube channel can give you some leverage in those negotiations, but then you also don't really have time or energy because we're on the road 300 days out of the year to be uploading enough content to be able not just to like battle other content creators, but also battling the standard YouTube algorithm. You have to be able to upload, a video a day to like actually have that growth. So I mean, we're in, I think the talent world's in kind of a weird spot, and I think that we lose a lot of leverage, and I don't think any TOs really losing sleep over that part. But just the life of talent, I'm very worried that there's not a whole lot of future growth for being in the broadcast spectrum at the moment in esports, which is kind of a scary prospect. But I think my main worry at the moment is what I brought up at the start is, for me and Aaron, as you mentioned, for you and some of the other guys as they get older, it's not just fixing the schedule for now. It's like, what happens when like Zywoo turns 27 and he's still playing and he's like, oh, I want to, get married? Or what happens when like when anyone wants to like settle down a little bit more? We need to fix the schedule before we get to that point, or else everyone's fucked. Like that's I think the real reason why people have been so vocal and players and talent have been so vocal about this over the year. It's like this conversation needs to actually begin in earnest right now, or else we're just going to have another fucking problem that pops up 5 years down the road that no one is even thinking about or no one is even seeing coming. So I think that's probably for me the biggest worry as I kind of get older and have different responsibilities, and I can't watch every single fucking game of Counter-Strike because, there's 12 hours of Counter-Strike on every day of the year.
Yeah, I can actually say one little thing about that. I'll make this the closing thought, which is this is one of those areas where we have to look outside of esports to fix these problems, because like I also think some of what has made the schedule so unreasonable is how successful, I know not in CS, but in the other esports games, South Korea has been fantastically successful, and they are basically legendary for how much time players practice there. Like I'm talking, when pro players always say in interviews, oh, we practice, up to 12 hours a day. They mean like a boot camp day or like, a day that you really focus. I mean, the Korean players are playing 12 hours on every day of the year. Like it doesn't, like some of them even like are not even getting anything except like their birthday or 1 week off in a whole year. And the problem in their industry is, because their industry was ahead of a lot of the Western industries in terms of domestically how big it got, is they never saw this as a problem. So when they work the guy to oblivion and his game goes to shit and he's burned out, there are thousands of people who are 16 years old who want to jump into that spot. And so their premise is like, right, well, this guy's done. He retires when he's 25, and then in comes the next 17-year-old guy, and we keep going that way. So my point is, you can't just solve it by like appealing to the TOs, like, oh, they make the scene better. Like to some degree, as long as their part of the business works, they're not really going to give a fuck. I feel like we have to, as a whole scene, fix it. Otherwise, like as Moses says, the best way to appeal to fans and companies in that respect is, do we want Simple to just quit when he's 25 and say, right, well, I've made enough money to fuck this game, I'm not playing this anymore. No, we want Simple to retire when he's just not good at CS anymore. If he can be like 29 but have had like a kid and a family and live somewhere awesome and build a house, but still be a pro and contribute to the same. Of course, we want big superstars out in the game. So I just hope that people don't think that just because the scene keeps going and there's always available players, that means everything's awesome. It isn't. It's just that because to some degree it is a dream job, people will put up with a lot of shit when it's a dream job that they wouldn't if it was just a job where you worked in a factory or something.
I know you wanted that to be the last thought.
Yeah, it's all right.
One thing it just triggered the memory. I just want, like, that is the big point, is that I think that's the reason we all have our ratings at like 4, is because this is not like a path at the moment, and this is not a scene that is structured to actually let people have a life. Like, having a life is not just traveling to every single Counter-Strike event and playing video games all day, every single day. And I know there's been, and it's not even for players, and it's not even for someone like me who's kind of at the top of the talent tier in Counter-Strike. I think the scariest part is at the lower end of the spectrum, where I have met employees of various esports organizations, especially in America, of people who are like, part of a production staff, or are part of, the referee crew, or are part of, set up and tear down for events. And I think the most terrifying thing is the amount of people that I've seen like get trapped in this esports dream, where I've seen them like, they've told me they've moved to LA to be a part of esports. And being that esports companies don't make a lot of money, they're getting paid like something mental, like $30,000 US to live in Los Angeles. And I sometimes just want to sit there and ask them, like, how do you actually survive? How do you pay the bill?
Yeah.
And I think there really is a very scary esports web that people get caught in, where they do like the dream. The fact that this is a dream job cannot be part of the sell of getting a job if it doesn't actually allow you to live the life. And I know there have been people working for companies that would not be able to eat enough food if these companies did not also cater lunch during the day. Like, they can't even afford to pay for food at times. So, like, if you're someone trying to break into esports, just be very careful in that regard. But it's not just the high end of the spectrum; it's also the low end of the spectrum. Of those people, probably get wrecked more than we do.
Literally end on that note then. End on a fucking down note. The whole industry's fucked, Moses. Everyone should just give up. There's no dreams or anything. That's it, isn't it?
Bring it all down.
I was trying to, end on like a uniting message to bring the scenes together, but it's all right.
You could edit
Let's leave it on that.
Swap those.
That's true, I couldn't. This video was kindly supported by Alexander Rao, Bobby, Dean Tanglis, Istar, JDubs, Jensen Goh, the Puyallup Tribe, Soliko, Spencer Green, Tobias Bernasconi, Xinged, and a special thanks, as always, goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask me a question in those AMAs I do each month. Do you want teasers for who's going to appear next on my content? Maybe you want to take part in one of those lengthy discussions about esports with me. Well, if so, then put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.